Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Mellow Amps and
Valves and More.
And today we're going to do a joint episode. So this is Tube Lab number 231. Wow, 231.
Yeah.
That's crazy. In fact, I was checking our videos and we've got over 500 videos between both channels. Anyways, time flies. And it's going to be Mellow Amps number 12.
And that's right, we're doing another dual video.
So we got a lot of things to talk about, but everybody is going to join in for the first half, and then we're going to break off and we'll do specific content for each one of the channels. And today we're primarily talking about the universal Phono Preamp. But we've got a lot of other interesting things to talk about, so let's just get started. First, caution everyone, electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. Now, we're actually using, for the first time ever, we're using a teleprompter, so Charles has to, has to get used to leading ahead for us. So, I'm happy to report that test builders have successfully finished their kits and many of them have placed reviews in the store. Now, there are some test builders who are just catching up, and we still want to hear from you guys. Every test builder who's ever built a kit, going way back to our very, very first kit, have contributed to improving the kits overall. Now, we don't always follow every single suggestion, but usually we of course consider every suggestion from the test builders, and the ones that we can apply we will incorporate into the products, either the existing lineup or into future lineups. So the feedback has just been universally positive. There's no significant build issues. And so it's time to release the kit to everyone who wants one. And here's some of the review comments.
Yeah, we've been getting some really great ones.
Why don't you start, Charles, with the first one?
Okay, so the sound is tangible. That is the best word to describe it. There were times when I was listening to the music that I felt I could reach out and grab the instruments around me. And I think that's just really telling. That's what we like to hear in our own listening room here. If you close your eyes, you want to imagine that the musicians are playing right in front of you.
Yeah, tangible is actually a new word. I think we mentioned it in a summary of reviews when we first started getting reviews in, and I like it a lot because it captures something. It's a non-musical descriptor, but it gives you sort of a sense for what people are hearing and what they're feeling. Mm-hmm. Here's a short one. This kit just blew me away. The detail was exceptional. The noise floor was very low with no discernible hum, and top to bottom was crystal clear and articulate. Yeah, and that's not something you normally actually hear people talking about vinyl systems as being crystal clear and articulate. And what that's saying is that the circuit itself, the design of the circuit, the tubes that it uses are giving us that clarity. And we'll talk a little bit more when we split off. We're going to have a longer video for MTA viewers, and we're going to talk a little bit about the secrets of why the Phono Preamp sounds as good as it does. Mm-hmm. What's next, Charles?
Well, the next one is stage width and depth were excellent, with great layering of the musicians and their instruments, and dynamics were much improved over what I'm used to. And again, this is something that we experience, being able to pick out an individual instrument or a musician doing something in particular and just focusing in on that, because it's not all muddied, it's not all mixed in together. You can actually pick out the bass line or pick out somebody tapping a cymbal in the background. It's incredible.
Yeah, in fact, I follow Paul at PS Audio because he's a designer, an audio business owner, manufacturer, audiophile of many years, many decades. And he was talking about this just the other day. He does a daily blog. So if you're interested in little nuggets about, I mean, sometimes he's just talking about some product he wants to flog to you, but most of the time he's just talking about the hobby.
Nuggets of wisdom gathered over many years.
Yeah. And the other day he was talking about how a really great system will give you that definition that allows you to be able to focus on let's say the pluck of a bass string. And at the same time, you can sort of bring your ear and brain focus into that moment, those harmonics off of the pluck, but at the same time you're hearing the whole picture. So you can sort of go back a little bit and listen to the entire jazz ensemble, or you can focus a little bit more on the pluck of that string. And when I'm listening critically, of course, I'm listening to everything. I want to hear all the pluses and minuses of what we're hearing. We spend 1/3 of our time designing a kit. We spend 1/3 of our time critically listening to it, and we spend 1/3 of our time tweaking the kit and getting everything organized. In fact, in the next video for MTA, we'll be talking about the coming headphone kit and that next stage of getting it into production. So, but we spend a full 1/3 of our design time actually just listening.
Yeah,
it sounds like a really tough job, and it is, but somebody has to do it. Okay, what's next? The difference between my previous system's sound and now was literally night and day. And yeah, I mean, when we designed the Phono Preamp, I had brought in over the years so many Phono Preamps, and they all just sounded so bad. It was the beginning actually of basically going pro as a designer. Was the desire to bring good sounding, affordable sound to audiophiles, who just didn't have that $10,000 budget for a preamp. And that's a real thing. Audiophiles with money can spend $100,000 on a system. But if you're on a budget and you want great sound, you can build it yourself for a fraction of that price. What's next, Josh?
Okay, well, I really like this one. The whole project was one huge, fun learning experience. I've done one other tube DIY kit and it turned out great. This kit was on a whole new level.
Yeah, I mean, I go way back when I was a young teenager and a wannabe audiophile. People don't become audiophiles instantly. They desire to become one, and then eventually you have the knowledge and the equipment. But my very first kit that I built when I was, I think, 14 years old was a Heathkit preamplifier. And back in the day, Heathkit preamplifier was like everything. It had 2 phono inputs. It had tape monitors, tape deck 1, tape deck 2 monitors. It was, it had literally everything in it. It was a fairly complex kit. But I had an incredible amount of fun. And when I first thought, well, I think I'd like a kit business, I thought, I want to capture the fun I had building that Heathkit all those years ago. Heck, I think it's almost 50 years ago. Almost half a century. But that's what Heathkit was about. They were about great sound at a reasonable price. Well, they did a lot of different kinds of kits, but I was really interested in the audio stuff that they had. Great sound at an affordable price, and they wanted you to have fun building it so that you would come back.
And we want you to have fun too.
Okay, up next is, I highly recommend watching all of the videos first, then watch them again as you build. Questions will be answered that This is behind the camera, so I can't read it.
That you have along the way because you've already looked ahead. And we recommend this with each one of the videos right at the start, to watch the whole video first and then go back through and do the build, because it's hard sometimes to get things out in the right order. And, you know, even as we're building things, we'll discover stuff along the way that might be a better way of doing it. So it's just good to get ahead. It helps you avoid issues, and helps you have a little more fun with the build.
Okay, so a big thank you to the test builders that have put reviews in the store. I'll put a link below both videos so that you can actually just drop in on the full reviews. They're all informative. They're all from a unique perspective of each one of the builders. And the reviews are great because they almost always talk quite a bit about the build process and, you know, their experience, and also the listening experience of the new Phono Preamp, because this is the sound of this is so different than what almost anybody has ever heard. And those secrets are going to come in a minute when we switch over. The MTA viewers are going to have to listen to us yammering on about that. Actually, we're going to try to do that in less than a minute, because we want to spend time talking about
this guy over here.
Yeah. So the new headphone power amp. It's a stereo power amp. So it's not like anything you've ever seen before. I don't think there's probably been something on the market like it, but it's going to be fairly unique because it's a headphone system. So it's going to be a component-based headphone system in which you need a high-quality preamp to drive a power amp. Mm-hmm. And
we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. And for everybody over at Tube Lab, we're going to take a look at some really cool tubes over here.
Yeah, Charles found a very rare 6SL7 that's got a couple of numbers. Tungsol made it, and
we'll talk about it a bit more in a bit. Let's not spoil it right now.
Yeah, so that'll be what we do over in Valves and More. And yeah, it's just an amazing sounding tube, and we have two of them. Okay. One matched pair. So
that's it.
That's it. So through the magic of editing, everybody's going to be on their main program in just a second. Okay, well, welcome back, MTA viewers. So the new kit Phono Preamp is now available to anybody who wants it, and as a small promo for early adopters. I mean, test builders, they get a gift of a complete set of quality vintage tubes, and we sent some great sounding tubes. And talking about tubes, Charles has made a new listing in the MTA store.
Oh, I've been working on it all week.
No, you've been working on it for 2 weeks.
Maybe.
Yeah, so what you did was you went through our entire inventory of 6SL7s and 12SL7s mm-hmm. and equivalent tubes, and you made a drop-down listing for matched pairs for the Phono.
They're already cleared, they're already matched, they're all listed on there, and it was a job, but they're up there and they're ready for anybody that wants to start rolling tubes in their Phono.
Yeah, now, even though there is a cathode follower to the 6N6P, and you could roll it, there's a couple of options. Really, we're focused on the two gain stages that are the 6SL7 or 12SL7.
They're going to have the most impact.
Absolutely. And yeah, so there's a huge selection of high quality tubes. We don't have huge numbers on probably any of the listings, but we have good numbers to make match pairs for the moment. Mm-hmm. All of the tubes that we're talking about they're not rare, most of them, but they're getting to that stage.
We have some quite rare ones in there. We have some beautiful Tungsol black glass 6SL7s. We have some WGTs in there.
I forgot about the tongues.
Yeah. We have some beautiful vintage Sylvanias, the ones that are in the sort of bad boy style with the tall bottle and huge chrome on them. So there's some great tubes.
Okay.
And
so
we were talking about a promo for early adopters?
Yeah, so for the next cohort after the test builders who want to go and grab a kit. Now we also build these, so you can have a professional build that Charles and I put together, And it costs more, of course, but I think the build fee is pretty reasonable. So it's in the same drop-down menu as if you were buying this as a kit builder. You just have to choose whether you want to build it yourself or you want us to build it for you. But we'll include a free set of build stands. These have, people who've been using these have been like, wow, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And yeah, I just love using these. It's just, it's increased the speed of build, and that's how we developed them. Charles needed them to do
our pre-built units more efficiently, and I really like them, so we thought the test builders would like them too, and turns out they absolutely love them.
Yeah. So we'll include a free set of those. You don't need to do anything. Just, don't buy them on the checkout, and we'll just include a set. We'll do that probably for the first month after the release. So moving forward, what's coming up next is the OTL headphone amp. The design phase is finished. The schematic is finished. Bench testing of the prototype. Now it's in our classic line chassis because it's just a lot easier to make a prototype in which we manufacture the chassis ourselves in-house. But we're at the point this week, it'll probably take us a week, maybe even 2 weeks. We have to design this. This prototype has to become a modern line chassis.
It's going to be roughly the size of the Phono over here, fairly similar. And we have to design the main PCB for it, of course.
Now, the secret to the great sound of the OTL headphone amp and the secret to the great sound of the Phono Preamp are very, very similar. So we'll start off with the Phono Preamp. I promised you the secrets. That they're not hard to figure out. The first thing is choosing a great sounding tube. And the 6SL7, 12SL7 tube, depending on which voltage you're running them at, is an amazing sounding tube for a Phono Preamp. It might not be a great high gain tube for every application, but when you're talking about that yummy analog sound, something that has a nice amount of warmth naturally in its type of design, or its typical build design, it's just the perfect tube for this. It's absolutely just perfect. It complements that analog sound that's coming off a vinyl record. It's just absolutely perfect.
About the warmest sounding high gain tube that you can get.
Yeah, and a lot of Phono preamps that are tube preamps that are on the market use the 12AX7, which is a little higher gain version and a more modern version of the 6SL7, and it took over from the 6SL7. And it is a very neutral sounding tube. We have, in fact, we're going to have a sale on the best sounding available vintage version. And if you're interested, jump back over to
the Tube Lab video,
Yeah, and we'll be featuring it as our weekly sale item, and we'll talk a little bit about the tube there. The other thing that really helps is short signal pass. So you might notice that the input and output RCA jacks are right about mid-chassis. They're even forward of mid-chassis. And the inputs are really close to the tubes. Well, they're actually really close to the input grids of the tubes. They're like this far away. And the point of that is to keep the signal pass very, very short. Anything that can introduce noise into a Phono preamp will. So if you were to put them traditionally, input jacks, when I was a young audiophile back in the 70s, that's the 1970s, not the 1870s.
Not that old.
Yeah. That everybody put the jacks in the back, which meant that you had to, you almost always had your power supply in the rear where the power cord comes. That meant you had to get the signal all the way through to the front, to the circuitry, and you had to do it with shielded cabling. You have to be very careful, and even then, shielding only keeps out so much of the noise.
And that's still a common feature today too, where you'll see inputs come in from the back and you'll see cables run all the way from the back up and around to where the tubes are, and we just don't think that's the best way to design.
No. Well, the sound proves this to be right. And the other thing that distinguishes this circuit from most modern preamps is that it has no feedback. It's a passive EQ circuit. And that has its own unique challenges because that means we need a lot of gain. So we have 2 gain stages, a huge amount of gain, which means that the noise floor has to be extremely low so that gain doesn't pick it up. But that passive EQ sound, that, in my opinion, that's the way to do the RIAA EQ. I almost stumbled on that. And the power supply. And the power supply of any audio equipment is what makes or breaks everything that comes afterwards. If you don't get the power supply right, you really muck up everything later on. You can't fix it later on. You have to start with a strong power supply. And that's part of the reason why we do 2 schematics. We always do a power supply schematic to show it in detail and how much we focus on that design, on that aspect of it. And then we do the preamplifier or amplifier stages on a separate schematic. And in this case, it's a quasi-dual mono design that took some of the lessons we learned with the Rocket preamp. And we built a unique power supply for the needs of the Phono Preamp because, again, the power supply noise floor has to be extremely low as absolutely possible. And that brings us over to the OTL headphone amp. You can see here that there's a whole bunch of capacitors. Well, there's 6 large 390 microfarad capacitors, and they are not cheap capacitors. They're going to be our biggest challenge for designing the chassis and the PCB iteration of it. It's going to be something like this when we're done, but I think we're going to move the headphone jack to the front to get it away from these tubes. These tubes are really hot. We're going to move the RCA jacks back a little bit, and Charles is going to. This is the big task. Charles is going to design an integrated PCB, just like what we use on the Phono, but of course, dedicated to this design. And we're going to bring in the final chassis. We're going to try and bring the capacitors through the top plate, so they'll mount on the PCB. So that's a bit of a challenge.
That's going to mean they have great ventilation, and it also looks really cool, I think.
Yeah, and the one thing about this design that's going to be new to our kits is that we had to find a high quality, long-lived, low noise fan, and we found one. Charles had one actually in stock, and you have a lot of experience actually with fans when you ran your computer business.
When I was doing computer repair work, this is something that was left over from that, and it's one of the highest quality fan manufacturers on the market for that, and
it
works beautifully here.
We're talking with the manufacturer so that we can open hopefully a commercial account because they're not cheap fans. But what I did actually was I actually dialed down the fan. So it's a 5-volt fan, and that was just a little bit noisy. Not in the sense that the fan is a clunky, noisy, clunky fan.
And not inducing noise into the system. It's just a slightly louder background noise.
Yeah. So I dropped it down to 4 volts, just a hair under 4 volts, and that quieted it right down.
Barely hear it even if you're right in front of it.
And it still gives us enough draw. So we're basically going to be sucking the warm air because this is a power amp. And even though it's a headphone power amp, it is a Class A headphone power amp, and it gets hot. So we're going to be heat sinking the main cathode resistors. I mean, it's a totally cool design, and the power supply is just awesome. But all those expensive components, of course, add up to the cost. So that's part of the challenge is making something that sounds great, that is reasonably affordable. So it's going to be, I think, in the ballpark of the Phono Preamp, probably just a little tiny bit more expensive, just because of the expense of things like the Nishikon filter caps and things like that, and the transformer that we're using in here as well, which is a lovely toroidal. Do you remember who makes the toroidal?
I think it was a Triad, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a Triad toroidal.
Yeah, we've started using their chokes too. I've been very impressed with their quality and how tight they've matched on their specs. So we're very happy with them.
So we're going to start taking names for test builders for the OTL headphone kit amp. And if you're interested at all, The same deal applies. In fact, there's actually in the store, there is, under information, there is a brief little blurb about
our requirements for test builders, what our expectations are for you, and how you can become one, which is usually as simple as just sending us a message and telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so we'll include, like we always do, we'll include a free set of quality vintage tubes. We haven't decided what we're going to send at the moment. Right now we're running vintage Svetlana 6AS7s, but of course you could run the more modern 6080, which is basically the same tube, but in a modern bottle. So, yeah. So it's been great chatting with you and getting up to date, and we look forward to doing more videos on the OTL headphone amp, because I've spent hours this week trying to break it, basically.
Yeah, we try that with all of our amps, but this one in particular is a beast, so we had to make sure it was rock solid.
Yeah, we've never designed anything that gets as hot as this thing does. So, while I'm doing testing, I have to drop in and listen to the sound quality and make sure that, after 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours of runtime, that
nothing is shifted.
Nothing is shifted. Yeah. So I'm checking temperatures of key components, and I'm checking voltages of the circuit to make sure they're stable. But I'm also checking the sound. So I'm listening live to a piece of music that's continuously playing through the system. And yeah, it passed all those tests. So yeah, the next time we talk about it, you'll probably see the first production build, which will be really cool.
Yeah, I hope so.
And we'll have the circuit up and running, so you could, up on the website, so you can look at that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the circuit and
the specs too.
Yeah. Okay, this is Jim
and Charles
signing off. Cheers, everyone.